demons. And as Christ followers, church, listen, you and I are commanded in 1 Timothy 1:18 to fight the battle well. That means you and I have to pour every ounce of our energy into the battle, into the fight. And that war circles around worship and glory. That is a biblical view from above the sun. And that view comes crashing into our lives as we live under the sun. As Paul challenges us in 1 Corinthians 10:31, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do all to what? Do everything to the glory of God. Well, today, church, I want to take a step forward and I want to pinpoint a target of attack that we have to have and make. And the target is one word: strongholds. Everybody say strongholds. This may be a whole new thought and teaching for you today, so I want you to pay close attention to what a stronghold is. And I'm going to read to you from 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 3 to 5. Listen, if you've got your Bible, turn there to 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 3 to 5. For though we live in the world, we do not wage war as the world does. The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of this world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought and make it obedient to Christ. Paul reminds us that we live in the world. We live in the here and now, and you know as well as I that living in this world is very harsh. It is filled with shock and surprise, disappointments and depression, financial and social pressures, tears and heartache. We live in a fallen world that is built around greed and selfishness. And this world will take you and take me and use our abilities for itself, sap us of all our energy, and when it's got everything it's got out of you, it'll throw you aside like a dirty rag. That's how the world operates. They will spit you out as useless if you can't produce. Self-interest governs all the power structures of this world. We live in this world of evil because this is also our mission field. And Jesus painted a very surprising picture of what this mission field is really like. Listen to Matthew chapter 10, verse 16. I am sending you out like among what? Now I can understand a wolf, one wolf amongst a flock of sheep. But I want you to try and imagine one sheep amongst a pack of hungry, wild, vicious wolves. That is the world you and I live in. We are the sheep. And we are thrown into a pack of snarling, wild, vicious wolves that want to tear you apart within seconds. Well, how do we live in this world amongst this pack of wolves? Well, the world has an answer for you, and the world says, if you want to handle all the wolves, become a wolf yourself. Become the biggest and the baddest wolf of them all. You dominate and you control. You make sure that you earn their respect. That's what the world says. And Paul disagrees 100%. And he says, no, you live as a sheep, not as a wolf. differently to the world, totally different, and that's why we fight with very different weapons. Paul is adamant, we do not wage war as the world does. Well, how does the world wage war? How does the world solve the problems of poverty and water pollution and inflation and racial tension and taxes? How does the world deal with that? Well, here's what they do. They have investigations and they do studies. They have meetings and they make new legislation. They use drugs and they pop pills. They make power plays and have political plays. They plan demonstrations and they press with boycotts. What they do, the world operates with fire, and they use fire to intimidate. They use bullets to eliminate. And you know some who are very dedicated to making or trying to make this world a better place, and they are very zealous for what they are doing, but it boils down to one wolf end up fighting another wolf. As the Bible calls it, it is flesh against flesh. And it is a lose-lose situation. Everybody loses if you fight with the weapons of this world. One wolf against another, and the baddest wolf will win. The way you and I wage war, church, as sheep, is we learn to identify strongholds, and then we begin to tear those strongholds down. And I this morning am going to use a military acronym to help you remember how we handle strongholds as the people of God. Well, the first one is ID strongholds. You know what ID means, don't you? Identify strongholds. Listen, look at me. You need to learn to identify and recognize a stronghold when you face it. A stronghold is simply a place where evil has a strong hold. The word defines itself. It is where sin is entrenched, it controls and it manipulates. The NASV, it uses the word fortresses. I want you to imagine a heavenly guarded fortress or a castle that is surrounded by thick, high, impenetrable walls. If those of you who like movies like I do and you've watched Lord of the Rings, you can imagine that fortress, that solid fortress. You need to recognize it when you see it. A stronghold, church, is very often constructed over time, over many years, and it actually is built very early in life in our formative years. An evil stronghold can grow inside of a person really slowly, and it almost becomes part of their personality. It becomes part of their character. Then as adults, you hear the stronghold saying things like this, making excuses. I hear it fairly often. It's just the way I am. I can't seem to help myself. Strongholds can even be the foundation of society, where strongholds, places of evil, now are accepted as normal behavior, even made into law. That is why it takes so long and the fight is so hard to deal with a stronghold. But before you can deal with it, you've got to learn to ID what it is. When you see it, you must say to yourself, that is a stronghold of evil that is set in place, that is like rock in somebody's life. Why does somebody keep shooting drugs when they can look in a mirror and see that it is destroying them? Because there's a stronghold in place. Why do we keep doing the same sin over and over and over when we know we should not be doing it? There's a stronghold that is holding us strong. Why does a husband explode into anger behavior every time his wife says something to him, because there's a stronghold of anger in that husband and in that man. Why are students at college so restless and so wild? A stronghold is in control of that environment. Why does good common sense not seem to be able to solve everyday problems that we face anymore? Because strongholds separate people when they can just agree on nothing anymore. Why does a court decision explode into riots and violence? The stronghold of race and revenge is stirring within people's hearts. Well, how do strongholds become so ingrained in a person's life, so strong inside of a personality? And Paul points to two ingredients that when they mix together in a person's life, they become an evil stronghold that manipulates them. Here they are in 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 5. Arguments and every pretension. Let me tell you these two things coming together that develop a stronghold. Number one, ingredient number one, logic. Logic. Listen very carefully. The Greek word for arguments here simply means logical thinking. We think about things all the time, don't we? We put 2 and 2 together. When we put 2 and 2 together, what does 2 plus 2 equals? Ready, Roy? Ready, Roy? 2 plus 2 equals 4. Okay, Roy, what is 4 plus 4? Yeah, 8. What is 8 plus 8? Okay, we got it. What happens when I apply normal everyday logic, like that math logic, and I apply that to something that is not of God? I will now logically argue God out of the picture. And once I have deleted God out of the picture, my fine-tuned arguments will now place me at the center of the universe. Now I see no need for God according to my arguments, because now it's all about me, and it's about my logic and what I think. And Paul, listen, he roots all logic without God, church. He roots all logic without God in demonic activity. Did you realize that? Listen to 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 1. The Spirit clearly says that in latter times some will abandon the faith and follow deceiving spirits and things taught by demons. Do you realize that? Demons see the minds of men and women that lies, that seem logical and very believable. Many years ago, I read a book that called them thought bombs. Thought bombs. B-O-M-B-S. Thought bombs. They said one logical thought from a demon can explode into the minds of 1 million other people. And that made sense to me. Using logic without God, Satan can control millions of people around the globe. Let me give you an illustration. The Muslim faith is a powerful thought bomb that controls millions of people who believe that killing all opponents of Allah earns them sexual depravity in paradise with 72 virgins. That's a powerful thought bomb that manipulates and controls people. Abortion is a thought bomb that controls organizations and millions of Americans. Greed is a thought bomb that leads people to steal and to hoard and cheat on the time clock at work and on their taxes. These are thought bombs that are rooted in demonic thinking that has nothing to do with God. That is why less than 15% of Georgia is sitting in church this Sunday morning, any place in Georgia, because they have used logic to conclude the church is full of hypocrites. Why would I want to go there anyway? They don't get the reality of this war, where Paul says our struggle is not against flesh and blood. It is not against people. It is not against hypocrite. It is not against the church. Our struggle is against what? Against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. You and I are all shocked to hear Josh Duggar from the TV series 19 Kids and Counting apologize. He was identified as one of the 32 million people who use the cheating's website, Ashley Madison. You probably read with sadness what he said last Thursday, and I'm going to quote him. "I have been the biggest hypocrite ever. While espousing faith and family values, I have secretly over the last several years been viewing pornography on the internet, and this has become a secret addiction, and I have become unfaithful to my wife." He had a thought bomb that exploded into his life and consumed him. Now, before you and I jump all over Josh Duggar and call him a bad boy, this could be the words of your neighbor. These could be the words of your school teacher. These could be the words of your best friend. In fact, these could be the words of somebody sitting next to you and near you today in church. A thought bomb. Has somebody been trapped in logical thinking that has nothing to do with God? You need to identify a stronghold, even if it's in your own life. Number two ingredient, not just logical thinking without God, but self-boasting. That's what he says, arguments and every pretension. Pretension. What is a pretension? A pretension is someone, when someone tries to impress others as to how important or how clever they are. They pretend to be something that they are really not. They talk about their abilities and how much better they think they can do something than anybody else. They automatically tear others down to make themselves look good. That's why criticism is a form of self-boasting. You probably heard a pretender this last week tear down, and you will probably this coming week hear that same pretender keep tearing down, because they just can't help themselves, because there's a stronghold in manipulation. You've got to ID that stronghold, church, because you've got to identify it as a self-boasting logic that has nothing to do with God. Because we know in God's love, there is no boasting. Logic and boasting mixed together to form a deadly cocktail, a poison that is far more poisonous than any rattlesnake venom. Paul says it sets itself up against the knowledge of God. In other words, this does more than just ignore God. They actively oppose God. And they will actively oppose His servants. They seek to eliminate what God says and what God thinks. They try to block God out, try to gag Him. This stronghold actually tries to take any thinking that's of God and pin it to the floor, like a WWE wrestler will pin somebody to the floor and try and make them tap out. That's what they will try and do, pin you to the floor and make you tap out. It's set up. It sets itself up. This is any thinking that paints God outside the picture. And the world revolves around this kind of evil thinking, and all that matters is what they think. You can hear, listen, you can hear Satan using logic with Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. And then he fed their pride, their self-boasting. And together it formed a stronghold in their life. And when that stronghold was strong enough, they immediately diluted what God had to say and opposed everything that God had commanded them. I want you to go back and try and imagine with me. Here's Adam and Eve standing at the tree that's just drooping with delicious fruit. Eve really liked what she saw. And she had an urge, a strong emotional response in Genesis chapter 3 verse 6. And when the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye, there's ingredient number one, logic. This is good for food. This is pleasing to me. She thought to herself, I like this fruit. It will help me stay healthy, and it just looks so tasty. Logic. And also desirable for gaining wisdom. Ingredient number two, self-boasting. She said to herself, what can I get out of this? This will be more for me, more for myself. If I have this wisdom, I will feel empowered. Self-boasting. And when these two ingredients came together, they formed a stronghold and deleted what God had to say. And you know what she did then, don't you? She took some and ate it. She just disregarded everything God had to say and ignored it. Well, where was Adam when Eve was talking to the serpent and the serpent was feeding her lies? Well, my first pastor, he used to say that Adam was out tilling the garden and she went and found him and gave him some fruit. Somehow my first pastor missed verse 6. This is what it says, and it tells us exactly where Adam was. She also gave some to her husband, who was? He was with her. He was standing right with her the whole time, and what did he do? So the man was sitting there, and he didn't lift a finger to defend his wife from Satan's logic. He just stood there like a dummy. Guys, don't be a dummy. When you hear logic that is without God, you need to address it right then. Stop being an Adam. Identify all logic that is against God. ID Satan as he feeds self-boasting. If you don't ID a stronghold, church, it will ID you. It'll target you. And it'll expand into your life. Number two, when you have identified a stronghold, you recognize logic without God, you see self-boasting, now you've got to do something. And I'm going to use the military term, letter A. In military terms, it means annihilation, deletion. It means obliterate. That's a strong word. Listen to what Paul says. The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish, to annihilate strongholds. And Paul speaks to strongholds that are already in place. We demolish, we annihilate, we obliterate as if they never existed, arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God. Listen, church, look at me. You can't sweep a stronghold under the carpet, no matter how much you try. You can't fuss at them until they go away, no matter how much you fuss. And you can't manage a stronghold. How? Now that is what most people do. They rarely fight to try and manage the stronghold. They try to get a handle on it. They try to control it. Listen to me. You can't control a stronghold. I know I can't. And the Bible makes clear, none of us can. You can't talk your way out of it, and you can't work your way through it. It's no good even praying about a stronghold. What does the Bible say? If you don't take the stronghold under control and destroy it, it will destroy you. A stronghold inside of a person must be hammered into little bits. You've got to take explosive and put it to that stronghold and blow it apart. You have probably seen on TV how they demolish a tall building. They place explosive at strategic structural points and then detonate them. Let me tell you some strongholds all of us face. Here are some. A baby in the womb is just a blob of tissue. The Bible was written by men and not reliable, a stronghold. We are just evolved animals. Christianity should be private. There are many ways to heaven, alive from the pit of demons. God helps those who help themselves. Not true. Two committed people should be able to marry. A stronghold in our society. Jesus was just a good role model, nothing more. If you and I don't set up our